Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the game development live stream. Sorry we got a little late start today, but hey, computers, you know. Anyway, we've got a really great talk today planned. We've been talking for weeks now about artificial intelligence here and there on the channel. In fact, I think we made some promise along the way that we wouldn't talk about AI every single time. And boy, was I wrong about that, because we talk about AI every week. It's just the unavoidable topic. So we just decided to say, screw it. Let's make a whole episode about AI, because that is something that everybody wants to talk about still. And it continues to be something that just changes every day. And there's lots of interesting technology around it. So I am John Radoff. I'm the CEO of Beamable. We're a gaming infrastructure company, basically the game engine for the back end of your games. I'm joined by Paul. Paul, introduce yourself briefly.
Hey, I'm Paul Stefanak, a game designer, creative director. I currently work at King, but my voice is my own. I don't speak for my employer.
Thanks, Paul. And we've got our producer, Oscar, here, who's going to keep us out of trouble with computers. Don't let me press the go live button anymore, because that messed us up. But we are live on lots of channels. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X, and we're already getting people streaming in here. But we have a couple of really awesome guests today that I want to introduce. So first, I'd like to introduce Avi Lautner from Sloyd. Avi, tell us just briefly about yourself, what you're doing in AI.
Yeah, hey, so I'm one of the founders and the CPO at Sloyd, and we're combining AI and procedural techniques to together create 3D assets and 3D scenes for mostly for game developers.
Awesome. And our other guest is Guy Gadney from Charismatic AI. Guy, tell us what you're working on.
Thanks so much, and hi everyone. So we're really focused on, I guess, narratives and the sense of bringing something which is sort of augmenting the gameplay. We're really interested in how AI can create sort of not just, I suppose, that idea of doing the same thing that you normally do, but faster or cheaper or whatever. But what new things can we create with this that we couldn't do before? So that storytelling and new stuff is how we're exploring things, and I'll show you some stuff later.
Awesome. To kick things off, let's talk a little bit about the whole idea of procedural content creation versus AI, and try to maybe place a box around some of those different concepts. Avi, if I understand it correctly, Sloyd is actually mostly or all procedural, parametric model creation. Maybe use some generative AI for prompting or something. Could you maybe help provide a lay of the land in terms of how you think of it, and then Sloyd, how you're approaching it?
So we have both. We have like what would be called the classic AI generation, which I mean, classic. It's so new, but right, it's using NER for Gaussian splatting, and then we have our own way, which is a parametric engine, procedural automation on top of that, and AI just for customization and prompting, from translating texts into actions in procedural and in parametric. And yeah, so that's basically how we do it and combine the two together. Whereas like right, the difference is that in procedural, it's predefined automation, right? It's automation going through a recipe that an artist, a technical artist, or a developer has created for it. Whereas AI, it's kind of generative, not prescribed automation where statistical paths are created by a machine, and then it creates without a script. And yeah, like I'd be happy to share more, but like yeah, maybe.
Okay, well, that's a little bit about maybe how they're different. I'm going to want to drill in a little bit more about the pros and cons of those different approaches, at least as they are today, and maybe also how you're thinking about how that's going to continue to evolve in the coming years. But this is also a good moment for me to mention that this is always an open conversation. So if you're watching the stream right now, and we've already got the first few dozen people wandering in here to learn about artificial intelligence, proceduralism within game development. If you're interested in these topics, you're welcome to join us. Maybe you're the head of a company in this space and you want to tell us what you're working on. Maybe you're someone who applies it. Maybe you've just got questions. So first of all, you can post comments on any of the places we are: Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X. We really, really love it when you share a comment that lets us continue to have a conversation around that. So you can guide the conversation. It's not really about me and Paul. We're just hosts, like hanging out here, pulling people in. And I don't know, frankly, we want you to do the hard work for us. Ask the good questions. The other thing you can do, if you're up for it, and I love it when this happens, you can actually join the stage too. So as much as it is us on camera talking amongst each other, you can jump into that as well. So post a comment that you'd love to join the stream. Oscar is standing by watching comments. So if one of you posts that you want to jump into the conversation and be part of it, by all means, say that you're interested, say what you want to talk about live and on the air. Oscar will get you a StreamYard link and you can join us on camera. So you just need a camera and a mic. So with that preamble, I want to turn it now over to Guy. Talk a little bit more about what you're doing, and specifically, like, are you using proceduralism in some of the things you're doing? Is it all generative AI? And how do you maybe classify the difference between those two before we kind of go back to those big picture questions of where the market is going?
Well, I think you did right. And it's worth winding back and doing some definitions of why you would do one or the other, right? So in real simple terms, I say that if it's a generative piece, generally it's something where you've sent something, over there, and the pendulum swings towards automatic. Procedural, sort of as I was saying, is that there is more. You're holding the reins more, and often what that means is you're controlling what you want out of it. Practically what that might mean in a game, and the stuff we've worked with Sloyd is that you have a particular style that you want to make sure that you're there, medieval castles, but you want to riff off that. So that starts from a core set of assets, and then the riffing off it is the procedural piece. And but you could generate almost like improvisations off that core, rather than wholly generative, where you go, just give me a castle, and then you leave it to the model to sort of improvise that, and you can get any sort of model. So my sense is that as we start to then look at where the human in the loop is in all of this, the closer you move that dial towards programmatic, the more human, creativity is involved in that. You might have a very clear artistic style, or you want suddenly to get into a scary moment or a happy moment in a particular experience. And that is going to mean that you pull those reins in. That is going to edge that pendulum towards programmatic, and then you can let it out again generatively. And I think to combine these two is where it gets really exciting, because you're starting to almost like conducting an orchestra. You're sort of going, okay, I now want some drums, or now I want some violins, or now I want these sorts of things. And at the end of the day, that's sort of what we do as creators. We bring in these different assets at different times. So I think, that definition is important, but the resulting of it is, and how you balance those, is sort of the new art form.
So Oscar, I think we have some content to show from some of the stuff that Guy has worked on. Are we ready to show any of that? Because some of this stuff is so visual. Like we want to talk about these things, but we should actually take a look at some of these things so people get a real sense of what's happening in this space today.
Sure, give me 1 second. I've got that queued up. There we go.
What topic do you wish to discuss in tonight's stream? The city is full of life.
My friend, you're in the city of Glasshaven.
Music has the power to connect people and tell stories.
Dance is a great way to express yourself.
So, Guy, first of all, here's what I love about what you did here. for a couple of years, people have been talking about, oh, AI hallucinates too much. That's what's bad about it. And you're like, oh, that's what's great about it. We're going to make that the game. So can you comment on that? Were you thinking the same thing? Like,
busted. Yeah. I think we leaned into this. I've got to say, so there's a bit of an origin story with this project, which is that we started working on this before GPT even launched. So a lot of the code was, really quite hard yards.
Hold on, guys. Chat GPT or GPT? Because we're seeing AI dungeons. So you were starting it even before, like
we
AI
were starting it way back.
GPT
So,
yep.
And the two guys, and initially even then the two guys, Seb and Connor, whose idea it originally was to look at this. That when we then brought the Seb in house and then built it up from there. The idea was that you should be able to have this sort of dream concept, tell the game your dream, and then that would then build the world. It would build the terrain. It would map the terrain. It would build the buildings. The buildings you need to be able to walk up steps, and they go round and then reach a sort of level that you walk out to. So architecturally, is really hard to do. The characters we have sort of, it depends, it's randomized. It's never consistent, but there can be up to 50 different NPCs in there that are spawned differently each time. That conversations you will have, those characters you'd never have met before and you will never meet again. So all of these things are really very fluid in terms of what we built. The story is interesting because we were creating this as OpenAI was evolving its GPT, and we were in touch with them very early on about GPT, and then 2022 elements of ChatGPT. So it was a real sort of labor of love on that. And I suppose the key thing was that there was this vision of this is how it should feel, so the font look, that was important. Then we got to meet Sloyd, and we were working again very, very early on, as Avi will say, as they were in sort of alpha beta, we were going, how do we connect this stuff together? And so some of the buildings that you see in there were built in collaboration with Sloyd. And technically speaking, what we're doing is, if you look at the buildings specifically, we will have a series of tiles for specific styles for a particular type of building. And that, if you like, is in the database. It's sitting in the application. We will then procedurally generate that building mesh, in the construct. There is elements again in generative space in that we have walls with graffiti on. That graffiti is coming from DALL-E, so generative. That's never been before, never seen again. And then the conversations are all real time. So anything that you've dreamt about, those conversations. And one of the key things that I love about that, and everything that we do in everything that we do, is that you get this sort of sense of, I don't know, NPCs and chatbots and all this stuff. They're all one-to-one. So it's like you walk you're walking down the streets, like, hey, buddy, watch where you're going. When you bump into them, it's like, oh, man. Whereas actually, if you had something narrative, which is more where, you might get close to an NPC and it leans into you and goes, psst, want to hear a secret? That sort of stuff is a provocation into the narrative. So we wanted to write that in as well. So that's that combination of I suppose, the procedural piece, which is there's a design style. We want to build it around certain parameters. There's set code in that Unity build. Okay, so already that's set. But then calling out to these different engines at particular pieces for particular reasons creates that ethereal. And John, you're dead right. We cut ourselves some slack by calling it a dream. Because it can hallucinate a little bit, but that's half the fun of it.
Awesome. Avi, so one of the questions I've been asked by VCs asking me continuously every time they look at a 3D graphics generative AI startup the last couple of years is basically, is 3D model creation, is that something that's ready for prime time? Now, you're not exactly doing that. Yeah. So I'm just curious your take on that. Like, where are these technologies today and where are they going?
It would be interesting to also hear Paul on that, maybe just from the side of King and maybe other game developers.
Yeah.
We're seeing increased adoption, I think, of AI. GDC 24, where you ask people, they're asked about adoption. So about 50% of kind of game companies have used AI, but it's mostly around LLMs to create concepts in the business side, maybe Copilot, and maybe some 2D images. This year, you're already seeing higher adoption in the survey that was done for 25, but also higher antagonism. Really, what it comes down to when you're looking at like completely generated, just like in diffusion, right? The machine learning generates every pixel in like G-splatting nerves. The machine learning network generates every cloud point and creates the mesh. Mm-hmm. You've seen that it's come a long way, both in time to production and in topology. But I think most professional artists would say that they would not use it yet in games, that topology is not good enough,
right?
That it consumes too many polygons. And then it's really difficult to change. Like it just doesn't fit into professional workflows, because if you want to make a change to a model that was not done that way, it's a lot easier to take parts to work with the UVs, whereas in completely in that mesh soup that you get out of Gsplat, it's like, try another prompt, see, maybe you'll get something better, or maybe not. That's basically what you have, or work for a really, really long time to clean things up. So
I wonder if we're going
to getting there, but I'm a big believer in a combination with procedural to really get outputs that professionals could use.
You pointed at the polygon count as an issue, and I wonder, with things like Nanite in Unreal Engine, does that fix that issue? I know that maybe people aren't running Nanite all over the place because there's concerns over which devices it can actually be deployed on, and issues around limiting your target audience. But it kind of solves for this problem of complex geometry within your game. I don't think Unity has a great solution for that today, but one could assume that this will eventually be figured out across the board. What happens once we don't care about polygon count in the source model, or will we keep being concerned about that?
Well, it's not just poly count. I mean, as already implied, like it's also the structural design. Like different workflows take different approaches, right? You know, and when something takes a different approach than your approach, it takes a little bit more time to catch back up with it. I mean, I guess I'd underline a lot of what Ari was just saying. I think in my experience and experience to others I speak to, the big gate for taking those tools and running that material straight into a AAA game, or heaven forbid a quadruple A game, honestly is the I don't even know that this is true today, because the stuff changes week over week, right? But I think most of us working on AAA and quadruple A games are thinking in terms of thinking in terms of like,
oh my God.
yeah, exactly. There's so many A's now. But like it's more, we have very exacting standards for our pipelines, and we have very exacting standards for the presentations of our IPs, right? And we need the hallucinations. We need that stuff for creativity. We see that, and it's very desirable. But at the same time, like it's a real, as already indicated, like the rework time often exceeds the value time a lot for us. But that's, like I said, that feels like it's changing on a week over week basis. So I don't know, like, where are we this week?
Avi, you're right in the center of this technology. How do you think it's going to evolve over the next, say, 2-3 years?
I think like when I hear objections, and I hear it all the time from creative directors and artists, like I always try to think, how much of it is it like I just don't want to change my workflows, and
yes.
how much it is like because it needs adjusting to something new, and how much it's like the technology just doesn't cut it, right? It's not good enough, right? Where are we at that point? I think we're at the point like where some technologies are already worth the switching costs, and the studios that would adjust to it would get a lead start, and not everywhere, right? So, but like, yeah, I think it's getting there. That said, like the classic generation has like big limits. Like it doesn't know how to create 3D form parts, right? If you want to do as an artist, you want to change things, it's not possible right now. It cannot create traversable buildings, right? Like Guy said, like right? You want to go inside a building, you don't want a loading screen and then something else to happen. And there are limits like that I think are still very far away. Even if the topology will get cleaner, and instead of taking 2 minutes, it would take a minute to generate an asset soon. Like those are things that are years away and perhaps would require kind of like a different mindset and a way to think and create and build neural networks.
If I can add into that, because I think it's a really good piece, and also, you know, the thread, Paul, is you're talking about AAA games and quadruple games, which I love. We see this sometimes when we're dealing with IP from Hollywood studios, where there is a very tight restraint on a piece of IP. So you're looking at like a pyramid structure where you've got a small number of incredibly professional, high quality, high value IP structures. Now those games, as we know, they're fewer and far between because of the production cycles. However, as you head down the pyramid into, you know, for want of a better word, the indie area, or, you know, handheld devices or whatever it is, those restrictions are loosened a little bit. There's a bit more playfulness with that. There's a little bit lower expectation of the quality, the fidelity, the photorealism of the graphical look. And I'm interested, like there is no hero yet, no sort of Angry Birds moment in like in a mobile that's come up of this yet. John, I think you referenced AI Dungeon before, which is I think one of the sort of moments that people looked at and go, oh, I see how that works, and we're starting to see more of these. So almost like there's another sort of little nascent genre, maybe hasn't got a name yet, of playfulness around the edges, which where that sort of that drop in or that difference is interesting, you know. So I think there is a, and then the other thing I just always say is never say never. As if it's saying this stuff moves so fast. It's like, oh, it can't do this, and then the next day it's like, done it, you know.
Well, it seems like this ability to just spawn dreams is getting closer to the idea of like the holodeck from Star Trek. I mean, because you're literally asking me, what do I want to dream about? Which, if you know, I think about the holodeck, it was go inside the holodeck and just say what you want. And then if it wasn't exactly right, you tell it to adjust, which is, to me, feels very much like the prompting experience that we all have just going into Chat GPT or using something like Cursor and Claude and tell it, this is what I want for my program. Oh, not quite right. Here's what I want to change. And it changes it for you in real time.
Yes, John. The only thing that where it really struggles is consistency. So it's great it's like the chatbot analogy maintains, is that what a chatbot essentially is a question and answer session. So it's a very short little moment. But if you're building a game that has gameplay for like 4 or 5 hours, that consistency of character, of narrative, of visual style, of audio, it struggles with. And that, I think, is one where the sort of the message and the medium don't quite match up. You know, so holodeck, great for a moment of a simulation of like, hey, I'm in this particular room, I've gone back in time, gone forward in time, but stay there for a little bit. And I think that's where that procedural piece starts to come in, because we need more direction.
Couldn't agree with you more. When I was talking about quality, I mean, I actually do think that the quality of these tools is super great. Like it's that fidelity over time that's the especially when you start talking about intellectual property, right? Like you were saying, like people intellectual property owners get very fussy over the very pixel per pixel existence of their product, and including internal proprietary ones. And so that consistency thing is really, at least in my world, one of the biggest things holding us back, right? But I think, again, it feels like it changes every week. Totally.
Have you guys seen Minecraft AI?
Oh, yes.
Where the So it just reminded me of the consistency there. It's like there's a funny video of somebody like playing it. So for the audience, it's a Minecraft game, but without game engine mechanic. It's just video that's streamed, but interactive video that's interacts to user.
I call it mid journey at 24 frames a second.
Yeah, exactly, 20 frames a second. So it's a bit slow, but it maintains some consistency, right? And so do all the Sora and short videos. They maintain some consistency. But there's a funny video where like the guy spins 360 and looks around, and there are daisies when he looks at one time, and then he goes back and looks again at the same view, and it's just the grass without the daisies are gone. and I mean, it's improving. You do see Sora videos that like and others that you do see consistency, and some people are talking like forget about making games, we'll make videos, but if you're making a TV series, right, you need to go back to the same settings again in an animated TV series. If you're making a multiplayer game where you need people to see the same thing from different angles, there's no getting around creating a 3D environment. And when you're creating environments, that's exactly that video.
What's going on? Why are these where did all these fence posts come from? What is this, a horse? No, it's a sheep. No, it's a bunch of sheep.
Yeah. So we kind of laugh at that weird hallucinatory effect. So for anyone who doesn't realize, this is a generated video, interactive video, not a game engine. So that's kind of interesting. But could you, 3 or 4 years ago, we were playing around with stuff like wasn't Dolly, it was like just these various diffusion models that you could do image generation, and it would take like 15 minutes or an hour or two to like generate an image for you. And could you imagine 3 or 4 years ago someone saying to the average person, I think there were some people that were definitely in the know, but hey, we're going to go from an hour to generate the image to, in just 3 or 4 years, we'll generate it 24 times a second, and it'll be an interactive video. Like, that's pretty impressive that's how much faster and more optimized these models already are. So it gives you a sense of a trajectory that could be pretty amazing. Where's that going to be in another 3 or 4 years?
So I'm a game designer, not a technical AI expert. So what I want to know is, when you look away from the daisy, like, why isn't there a second agent running behind doing, basically doing the reverse, like looking at the image that was generated and sticking that daisy into the database, right? You follow me? Like, why isn't somebody reverse harvesting the dream and codifying the dream as we go?
It's really interesting. I think to that point, it's probably because that person hadn't thought about it. And that's a really good idea. The speed of this is so, in my career in sort of technology and creative technology, I've never seen it this fast ever, over 30 years. However, what I say to people when I'm talking to groups about people is that it can feel very overwhelming with AI, because, as you said, every day there's some new news feed, bing, bing, some new things. Actually, the longer term patterns, I think, follow two key things. One is, rather than thinking about AI, think about automation. And then, Paul, to your point, okay, so if you're a game designer, you're starting to think about automation in that workflow, and where might that fit? So you're already on happy ground, because you're thinking about your pipelines and then thinking about automation. The other thing, which goes back a little bit, John, to what you're saying, is to chart the impact across time. And it's obvious to say, but it follows the same thing like the internet did, right? So early days of the web, you're on text, then you're on stills, and then tiny little videos, and then it grows up, so it follows the bandwidth. So I think we can assume that whenever you're looking at limitations at the moment, whatever the limitations are, whether it's 15 frames a second, 20, we will get up to 60 frames a second, or whatever biological landmark we need for our eyes. Equally with audio. And the ultimate piece, which we've been working on, we've been looking at, interesting psychologically more than anything, with conversational NPCs, is how close do you need to get to real time? Now, psychologically, in a conversation space, it's about 250 milliseconds, because anything longer than that is a human pause. And if I start to put 250 milliseconds at the end of each sentence, you're going, what's wrong with this guy's brain? Is he like sort of, receiving messages from someone else and waiting for it? Under that, it's fluent conversation. So I think there is, as we nudge towards real time, there's probably, I don't know what it is, but there will be a psychological barrier where, and Avi, you were mentioning things like render time for a particular asset. As long as it's either pre-rendered just before or close enough to real time that we believe it's real time, that's exciting. But these are barriers that are just plowed through every week, these sorts of limits.
So if we can, I would love to show off Sloyd, and so people can get a sense of what is it like to work with Sloyd. But while you're thinking about what you want to show in that respect, Avi, let me just remind our viewers of a couple of things. So first of all, we've got over 100 viewers here in the live stream. I'm sure we'll have thousands on the replay here, but this is why you want to be part of the live program. You can actually ask questions. Right now, you could post a comment and we'll surface that right on the channel and we'll talk about it. So you can be part of the live experience here. So if you're seeing this in replay, come on live next time, because it's a real opportunity for you to interact with leaders in game development on the technology side. Today, we've got two amazing leaders at the forefront of artificial intelligence as it applies to AI. Every time we do this, it's studio heads, it's technologists, it's creative heads, it's people that are really building product, whether it's the technology side or the experiential side of games. So would love for you to be part of that live conversation, which just means you have to be here when it's live. So we do this every 1 p.m. Eastern time, weekly on Thursdays. So join us. You can also be part of the live conversation in video as well. So if you want, Oscar will get you the link. It's a little bit of a secret link. You get to be part of the club here and come on. And all you need is a camera and a mic, and you'll be part of the live studio experience. And it could be that you just have questions you want to ask, or maybe you've got your own AI project today that you want to share with everybody. That would be perfectly great. Now, as Avi is continuing to work on just preparing the Sloyd to show everyone how this stuff works, you said something really interesting, Guy, before, which is this idea of playfulness at the edges, I think were the exact words. I really love that idea, because what the thought it inspires for me is a lot of the application of AI here, it's not going to be just about, say, making games faster, the faster horses analogy to invoke Henry Ford. That is an application of AI, but it's not going to be just about that. And it's also not going to be necessarily just about taking games and doing more of the same, but AI does it. So it's not going to necessarily be Baldur's Gate 3, but with AI implemented NPCs everywhere that you interact with. I share no judgment actually on whether that's a good or bad idea, but you're talking about something different, which is really almost maybe a whole new category of product. They're kind of game-like. They use AI. They have unexpected elements in them. Can you develop that idea for us a little bit more, this playfulness at the edges? Where are we going with this?
So, I bring in some of the work we're doing with like Hollywood studios and actually like video entertainment space. And there's terminology which is arising a lot in that video generation space of around narratives of liquid stories. The idea that a story isn't fixed in its space. It's playful, and it's something very, I guess, more common and that we in the games industry all sort of find quite useful. But the idea is that who I am as an individual player and how I want to be within that world can influence the world. And an example of this might be where let's say it's a 3D game, and I'm running through a town, a sort of Western town. And in a standard game, you may run through and that mission is completed in, a few minutes. there are two ways, just off the top of my head, where I might change that. One is that I stop in the bar, and if I walk through that saloon door and I go over to the left and I start speaking to the people, and by the way, voice in, voice out, like we are here or like we are in a co-op environment, whatever it may be, then the people on my left, and let's say there are 10 of those, are now my friends because I went and talked to them. Conversely, the people on the right are now not my friends because I ignored them to begin with. And what that then does is it starts to trigger, because those are now memories in that game. It starts to trigger and cascade because I have now influenced the way that that world exists because I've interacted with those characters. It's a bit, there's a parallel with the grandfather paradox around time travel. It's like, don't go and talk to anyone back in the past because it's going to influence. It's that piece. There's another piece which is that the world itself can adapt, in real time. And I saw this with a demo this week, actually, where as I walk through a town which has been created by an artist, that town can change visually. So I could have that town suddenly change to black and white, to a sort of charcoal look. I can have it day, night, change things. That's not about, in a programmatic world, you'd have to create all the tiles to change that, or the lighting would have to change. What actually happens with the AI is it's completely changing that entire model. It's holding it consistent, but it's layering it and viewing in a different space. And why would you do that? It may be, again, a thing that Paul wants to do as a game designer because he wants to do something interesting and change up the world. And if you want an experience of what it might look like in the movie land, I mean, it's sort of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. You've suddenly got this space where you've got this incredibly confluence of different styles and things, and it's done for effect. So again, I go back to it, almost like the deployment of AI allows this sort of fluidity and playfulness, not only from the game designer, but it allows the player to insert their own character into that game and evolve it. It's difficult to articulate because so much of what we do at the moment, is telling things about it, and we need to show it. Show don't tell. But as we see, these tools are evolving so fast. It's great, the game designer I think is God still in that space, but it just allows for more freedom to movement because some of those technical restrictions that we used to, like polygon count or frame rates or whatever, as we're seeing, we're starting to have a little bit more fluidity in that space. That's the long and short of it. I hope it makes sense. It's difficult to articulate sometimes.
Well, let's do some showing instead of telling. Let's look at some of these tools so that people get a sense of what it's like to work with them.
All right, let's pull up. Let's see.
So this first one here is an example of using Sloyd as a plugin within Unity, and it's an example of prototyping. So the idea is not to create a finished asset, but to run a concept of how it would look, how the back alley of, in this case, Moscow Center, right, in GDC would look like. And so here I'm doing this only with text prompts using the Sloyd plugin. So I've asked to create a barrel in silver, and I said which type of colors. I said red, silver rings, and red barrels, and it comes out because of the method that we use, that it's like assembling pre-made parts together and texturing them in real time. It just takes seconds instead of minutes. Here I'm editing this factory with some text. I'm asking to change the roof, to add the HVAC system so it looks a bit more factory-like. Now I'm adding rusted lacquer, so you see it's coming on with a rusted iron texture, and doing some edits, like I want it to be larger and so they don't look identical. Remove the legs, and I'm starting to create, like, right in 2 minutes right now. I have a beginning of a scene, adding another building and a fire extinguisher, and that's like something I actually started this from, like, doing it in demos just to show it around. I sometimes do sequences like that, either creating a house with furniture, or a living room, or a bedroom, or something like that, and that's one use case that you have, where when you can have that speed of creation in seconds and editing in seconds. It's really effective for concepting and prototyping. The second link, let's see. I'm not sure which this would be. So if you could
Avi,
jump to the third, maybe.
Maybe while we're getting that ready, just some questions about what we were seeing there. So when you're prompting it, it's kind of selecting a base model based on the prompt, if I understand the way the tech works, and then you're producing a model that's parameterized so you can adjust it. Am I kind of just capturing the internal technical flow?
So we have a library of parts made by artists that are also paid for creating them.
Okay.
And we use the AI to understand text and then to take those parts and assemble it together to the closest thing we can create to that text prompt. And then we also, in real-time texture, we pull from a library of textures, of hundreds of textures, whether you like stylized or not, or realistic, and we put it on top of those parts. Because it's part-based, the textures are really clean and how they're added. And so we can create in seconds, we can edit in seconds with the same mechanism. And like when we edit it, even can understand things like style, right? If you ask for something stylized or cartoony, it wouldn't just select textures that are more appropriate, but it would actually change the shapes. It might make the dimensions, distort the dimensions so it looks more stylistic, make things more beveled, right? So those are all capabilities where we could adjust the parts, like how the parts are assembled together into a shape, but also go into every single part that's a parametric part, means it's stored in code, and change small things like the beveling. And together we compile, eventually a model. So the great thing there is it's in seconds. The limitation is that like where you're doing the gist-plotting way, you could like potentially do anything, right? And here it's within a space of available parts. And so that's why those two methods are powerful together. Right?
So the language model is essentially a user interface, so to speak. And then, I don't know, I'll guess that you're doing something like a vector similarity search on the desired object or model or something, and then surfacing that from this library that you've assembled from developers, but it's structured in a way that you can now make the adjustments in it.
Yeah, the very highest level, the AI, is either a language model or we use other models. We use something that batches text to image snippets as well. The level below that, we're actually using procedural to say a roof needs to snap on top of the wall. We want to do it fully AI, that part. We are not like, we need to give assembly instructions in procedural methods. And the very lowest level is a parametric engine where we have every shape, if it's splines or it's primitives, we only store it in code. So that's why we could like, but because it's code, it's very easy to manipulate the base shapes, right? A shape would be a column in the building that we see over here, or So
very cool. Okay, what are we looking at now?
So those are a few examples. So here it's like, it's not from the web, like everything is actually from the web app, but like we placed it here, with like, but this is these are like some examples now at the level of an asset, right? And not prototyping, where I think like you typically we see indies taking this and putting it in their games directly. And what we see with the professional users, they like to take it as a starting base, and then they put their own touch on top of that. And like, if we are having a professional artist use us and tell us that they've like saved 60% of the work, we're actually really proud. It's a good outcome for us.
And I'm kind of sensing from what we were watching that when you include your adjectives in there, like rusty, you're also, it's sort of intelligently applying a texture map or something to the various surfaces. And I kind of... Yeah.
It interprets text into either texture, material, right? So material could be transparency or metalness or roughness of the shader, and shape. Shape kit batching as well, and the shape itself, right? So those are all the taking all those text inputs and interpreting them into those various ways of manipulating.
Paul, in the work you do, are you seeing people eager to try to apply this kind of technology to their workflow?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, not just my own, but talking to, other designers and other studios, at an industry level, I think the way you just described it, it's a starting point at this point, right? But especially when you're building large quantities, large volumes of asset, that starting point is a real time saver. And I think, I mean, people are absolutely using this already, at all levels of studios, right? But I guess at the highest levels, there's still a long delta between what you see on the screen and what can go through the final pipeline process, right? So I mean, everybody's using it.
I think the really important thing is this stuff actually does work. It's no longer just a dream. Like I think that was the early take on some of these things. Oh, this is just going to be another one of those things. It's overhyped. It can't really be put into practice. But I think what we just watched is a very practical tool that people could use, especially for prototyping.
I mean, in my limited experience, I think I don't know anybody that isn't doing it at the foundational ideation level, but I know zero people that are doing it as a complete total pipeline, right? I don't know anybody that's doing it hands off, end to end pipeline yet.
But we don't have level 5 AI quite yet.
Exactly.
Level 5 is you just dream it and it comes into being exactly what you wanted.
And depending on the complexity of your pipeline and the number of IP holders and the rigidity of your final thing, different people are in different places of that spectrum, right?
Well, I have a question. I mean, from your perspective, where things stand right now, who's going to see the immediate benefit to these technologies, off the shelf or like retrofitting stuff that they're getting from, Civet AI or something? Is it going to be like the people in the AAA space, or is it going to be the independents who are more prone to experiment and to accept lesser fidelity in pursuit of an end result, which is a shareable experience? It's like people will do stick figures because stick figures are compelling in some level. Like, are indies going to be who hold this banner up the highest first to try to get stuff out there?
I think from my side, I think the short answer is both, but doing different things. So I remember doing a sort of round table, sort of closed round table at DevCom a few years ago now, like 3 years, and there were a couple of, I won't name them, but global AAA, quadruple A studios, and they had said, look, on the current pipeline, on the current conveyor belt of that process, they especially, Paul, as you said, that early stage, the sort of the pre-production, if you like, stage, especially in the production of early stage artwork, they'd let go 50% of that team, and indicatively that was about 50 people. So that's a chunky amount, right? So at that level, I think what you're looking at is much larger organizations which are very focused on, I mean, they're large organizations, they're a business, they're a large business, whatever industry we're in, they're a large business. So they're very focused on bottom line. And risk for them at the moment, and has been for a little while, especially around the social elements of AI. In other words, the negative reactions that have happened from voiceover artists or designers has been a big risk. So there's been a little bit of, I agree again, we know everyone's using it, they're just not necessarily talking about it. There's been a bit of a sort of a worry about the risk of using it. Then you shift to the indies and you go, well, they can absorb that risk because there may be 5, 10, 20 people in the organization. So they're looking at how they can compete. They can punch up a little bit and get the ideas out faster. And in that sense, and also that risk is less for them, but also they can start to think about those ideas that are equally risky, which may be a gameplay concept that no one's tested yet. And that's hard to implement, as we know, in sort of, into a major AAA production pipeline, which may last for years. But and you know, we've attempted, just sort of anecdotally, we've talked to AAA game studios about putting Charisma and Charismatic into that pipeline. The problem we've found selling it is an interesting one, which is that when the game first starts, it's got an existing pipeline. You know, it's like, this is what we did 3 years ago. This is what we did 2 years ago. This is what we did 1 year. So this is what we're going to do now. Now that pipeline, hypothetically, let's take an example that's 3 years long, right? So the project manager and the producer on that particular project, they bring up their spreadsheet and they know roughly what is going to go from step 0 to step 100. If you try and swap out one of those pieces and go, hey, this one, number 56, is now AI, like, whoa, hang on, you're pulling a plate from the bottom of the crockery pile. You know, like, this is now destabilizing you because I don't know what it's going to be. So there is a slight default in the sense that games industry is a high risk technical, you know, industry anyway. And the idea of swapping out an existing process with something which is innovative, even though there could be a positive bottom line and profitability element, there is reticence still. And so we've found that has been, it's been surprising for me personally, and speaking candidly and personally, is that, you know, I compare it to like video studios or Hollywood studios. The adoption of it has been more there, but I think faster than the games industry. And my sense is that's what it is. It's already a high risk industry. So to swap out number 56 in that project manager's schedule with a bit of an unknown of like, will it make it faster? Won't it? May go wrong. The model idea is a challenge. So sorry, it's a long answer to your question, but I do think that the impact is tsunami-like. It's not a wave like you talk about, like a particular trend that comes and goes. Because this is so pan-industry, like as you guys are sitting at home and you've got your coffee cup, that coffee cup has got AI somewhere in the manufacturing process.
Exactly.
Right? It's a really broad, it's a broad piece, and we know that therefore it's not going away. And the final piece to add on it, because I get involved bizarrely in things like governmental policy for AI in the creative industries, because it's a big deal. And if we look up into like national and international use of AI, it's not even about technology, it's about power. You know, if OpenAI releases is about to release a video model, China will release one a couple of days before or a couple of days after. There is a seismic piece around this, which is political. So I think those you can, you know, but then again, you never get the White House going, hey, we're going to build a White House in Second Life. That's really cool. And we're going to put trillions of dollars into it, but they do in AI. So, you know, we'll see.
All right. Well, thanks, Guy. We're at the top of the hour, so we're going to have to conclude there. But I really want to thank our guests, Guy and Avi, for joining us today. You guys are welcome back anytime, especially if we're talking about AI. But I think you know a lot about the game development process. So feel free to join us, because that's something anybody can do, by the way. So if you're watching this in a replay, join the other 150 or so people who are part of the live audience, except maybe add a comment or join us on stage. Next week, we have a really awesome broadcast. I'm going to do it live from South by Southwest. I'm going to have Tony Parisi, one of the godfathers of virtual reality, inventor of VRML, professional musician. He's been involved in blockchain projects, games, game platforms, worked at Unity. He's done it all. So join that one. It's going to be really, really cool. And we're going to do that Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And then on Thursday at 1 p.m., we got a couple of really great indie game developers, Achiro Lamb from Dejoban and Renee Gittins. They've both worked on a number of indie game projects, and they'll share with you their journey through the whole messy universe of indie game development. So I hope you'll join us for both of those. But this is where we got to call it the end for today. So Guy, thank you. Paul, thanks for being here again. Oscar, thank you. Avi, thanks for joining this. And I'll see some of you in South by as well.
Look forward to it. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. We should definitely do it again. Bye.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.